Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Code Web Training. Today, we continue with our training series on ICD-11, an important milestone in how we classify and report health and disease worldwide. Today, we discuss ICD-11 conventions used in coding. ICD-11 represents a modern evidence-based framework designed to capture more nuanced clinical concepts, support better patient care, improve public health surveillance, and enable richer data for research and policy decisions. It reflects advances in medicine, digital health, and international collaboration, while remaining rooted in the familiar structure of ICD that we have relied on for years. Over the course of this session and the series to come, we will dive deeper into other features, resources, and tools of ICD-11. Code Web Training is a foundational introductory resource to help you become familiar with ICD-11 concepts and terminology. It is not a substitute for a comprehensive formal ICD-11 training program. For full proficiency and certification, please pursue an in-depth in-person or formally structured course delivered by recognized ICD-11 training providers. While we introduce ICD-11, ICD-10 remains in active use for many programs during the transition. To support you fully, our CWT program will continue to cover ICD-10 topics in upcoming sessions, ensuring you stay proficient across both coding systems. Thank you for joining this important journey. Together, we will unlock the power of ICD-11 to improve mortality reporting, support better patient outcomes, and strengthen health data worldwide. Let's begin with a high-level tour of what's new, what stays familiar, and how this transition will unfold in your daily coding practice. My name is Saman Gamage, and I'm a medical doctor with a specialization in public health. I currently serve as a senior technical advisor on medical certification and ICD within the Bloomberg Data for Health initiative of the CDC Foundation, and I'll be your guide through this presentation along with Patricia Wood and Yusuf Ahmed. The content of my presentation was reviewed by the two coding experts, Patricia Wood and Yusuf Ahmed. This is our expected learning outcome. By the end of this session, the student should be able to describe the conventions used in ICD-11. Here is our lesson plan for today. ICD-11 conventions to classify clinical concepts. We will discuss residual categories, other specified and unspecified, due to, associated with, code also has causing condition, has manifestation, use additional code, the conventions and or inclusions and exclusions, NOS and NEC, not otherwise specified and not elsewhere classified, certain, then spelling, parentheses, grammar, and other conventions. ICD has standard ways of representing its content. ICD-11 makes use of certain abbreviations, punctuations, symbols, and instructional terms. These are referred to as coding conventions. Conventions describe textual content and also apply to the coding structure. Let's refresh our memory about ICD-11 codes. As you know, ICD-11 codes are alphanumeric. They range from 1A00.00 to ZZ9Z.ZZ. As you know, first character of ICD-11 code relates to the chapter. First character can be a letter or a number. Chapters 1 to 9, first character of the codes is chapter number. Chapters 10 to 26, first character is an English letter A to S, except I and O. Talking more about ICD-11 codes, the second character of ICD-11 codes is a letter. And this differentiates ICD-11 codes from ICD-10 codes. There is also a number at 3-character position, preventing the pronunciation of undesirable words. Let's go through the conventions. Residual categories, other specified and unspecified. ICD-11 coding should always be completed to include the most specific level of detail possible with the use of one code or multiple codes as described above. There are, however, circumstances when that is not possible, and for that reason, the ICD-11 includes categories titled Other and Unspecified. Other specified and unspecified. Let's discuss an example. There are different types of juices: grape juice, apple juice, and orange juice. And we have assigned codes 1, 2, and 3. If you have just fruit juice, and if it is not specified what type of juice it is, then it is an unspecified juice, fruit juice, because we do not know what is in. Therefore, in codes, we use the last character Z to indicate this is unspecified, because it just says fruit juice and we do not know whether it is grape juice, apple juice, orange juice, or watermelon juice. Then, if there is dragon fruit juice, which is not in the list of fruit juices, grape juice, apple juice, and orange juice, because we have a list of 3, 1, 2, 3. But dragon fruit is something special. And this is an other specified type of fruit juice, which is not in the original list of grape, apple, and orange. Therefore, we name this as other specified, and the code has the last character Y. If you say just fruit juice, it is unspecified. And then you have specified varieties of juice: grape juice, apple juice, and orange juice. And dragon fruit is an other specified because it is not in the list of codes. So residual codes are displayed as red text, and residual codes are located at the end of stem code blocks. If the information in the source documentation is very specific, but the tabular list does not include a specific category, users identify the closest category match and code to the residual category titled Other Specified. This means there are instances where the information in the source documentation is very specific, and the tabular list does not include a specific category. And in this case, users identify the closest category match and code to the residual category titled Other Specified, similar to the other specified type of fruit juice, which is dragon fruit juice, which is not in the list. If the necessary information to select a specific category is not available, the residual category unspecified is selected because we only know this is fruit juice and we do not know the type of juice. And then we will use other specified, unspecified for fruit juice. And you can see here how the residual categories are indicated in the tabular list or in the ICD-11 browser. CA03.1, other specified acute tonsillitis. CA03.Z, acute tonsillitis unspecified. Other specified codes have the last character Y. Unspecified codes have the last character Z. Residual codes are located at the end of code blocks, similar to previous versions of ICD. For example, 5A00.2Y, other specified acquired hypothyroidism. 5A00.2Z, acquired hypothyroidism unspecified. Let's move on to another convention, due to. Due to in ICD-11 describes a causal relationship between conditions. The synonyms are caused by, attributed to, or secondary to. They give the same meaning as due to. For example, 3A01.3, vitamin B12 deficiency anemia due to intrinsic factor deficiency. And here there is another code, 3A01.3Y, other specified vitamin B12 deficiency anemia due to intrinsic factor deficiency. So this is an example of a previous convention we discussed, other specified. Associated with is another convention used in ICD-11. The term associated with in ICD-11 describes the coincidence of two conditions. Example, JB45.0, abscess of breast associated with childbirth. A woman who has given birth to a child is having a breast abscess. So abscess of breast is associated with childbirth. Code also add detail has causing conditions. These conventions in ICD-11 inform the users that additional information is required or optional to be coded. Sometimes additional information is compulsory and it is required, and other times providing additional information are optional. Code also add detail or has causing condition must be coded. That is, information is required. The code also add detail or has causing condition informs the user about the required additional etiological information. They must be coded in a cluster with certain categories because that additional information is relevant. For example, the category diabetic cataract indicates the code also for the type of diabetes. This means that the code for the type of diabetes should be assigned in conjunction with the code for diabetic cataract. Both stem codes for the type of diabetes and the diabetic cataract are always reported in a cluster. If the two codes are Two stem codes are post-coordinated to provide additional detail. The order within a cluster should follow the use case, example, mortality or morbidity. The first stem code is separated from the second stem code by a slash. Code also at detail has causing condition. If only one code can be retained during data analysis for mortality, underlying cause of death, and public health prevention, priority of order should be given to the code that best describes the etiology of a condition. That means the underlying cause of death. For morbidity data analysis, priority should be given to the main condition, the reason for admission established at the end of the healthcare episode. The convention has causing condition is required. Example, GB61.5, chronic kidney disease stage 5. And then GB61.5, chronic kidney disease stage 5 has a causing condition. If the certifier has indicated the type of diabetes, 5A10, type 1 diabetes mellitus. Required additional information is provided as has causing condition, and this is required. So this is the cluster for mortality use cases 5A10, GB61.5. Type 1 diabetes mellitus is the underlying cause of death, the etiology, and chronic kidney disease stage 5 is the complication or the current manifestation. This is for mortality use cases. The most important is the underlying cause of death or the etiology. The code for etiology should come first in the cluster. The cluster for morbidity use cases is different. GB61.5 will come first, separated by a /5A10 for type 1 diabetes. So chronic kidney disease stage 5 is the main condition or the reason for admission. And type 1 diabetes mellitus is the less important code for morbidity use cases, and it is the etiology. Has manifestation or use additional code if desired are optional. Instructions inform the user about optional additional details that can be coded. So these are the other conventions, has manifestation or use additional code if desired. Here is an example. Diagnosis duodenal ulcer with acute hemorrhage. The code cluster is DA63.Z/ME24.90. The condition CA63, duodenal ulcer unspecified. The manifestation, use additional code if desired, ME24.90 for acute gastrointestinal bleeding, not elsewhere classified. So it is the manifestation of a duodenal ulcer. So this is how it is coded. You have a cluster of two stem codes, duodenal ulcer with acute hemorrhage. This is another example, thalassemia unspecified, 3A50.Z. And you can add optional additional information as manifestation. And these are optional to be added. Another convention, and O, used in ICD-11 as per their meaning in formal logic. A and B means both A and B are present. A or B mean either A or B or both. In other words, O means and OO. A and B means both A and B are present. A or B can mean either A or B or both. For example, the code NC32.4, fracture of shafts of both ulna and radius. So this could be both ulna and radius. The code NC32.4 is only used if the shafts of both radius and ulna are fractured. Fracture of shaft of ulna without radius would not be coded here because and means both. Both A and B are present. Both ulna and radius are present. And this is different to how these terms were used in ICD-10. Another example, JB05.3, obstructed labor due to pelvic outlet or mid-cavity contraction. This means the obstructed labor could be due to pelvic outlet contraction or mid-cavity contraction or both pelvic outlet and mid-cavity contraction. NC1Z, injuries to the shoulder or upper arm, unspecified. NC10.Z, superficial injury of shoulder or upper arm, unspecified. The convention O gives the meaning of injuries to shoulder or upper arm or both shoulder and upper arm. Moving to the next convention, inclusions. Example of diagnostic statements at the same code level in the classification. They are either different conditions or synonyms. Example, 3A70, aplastic anemia, inclusions, medullary hypoplasia, and panmyelophthisis. Both these conditions are inclusions within the code 3A70. Conversely, exclusions indicate that an entity is classified elsewhere, not within the same code range or chapter. They help users avoid misclassification when two conditions are distinct enough to require separate coding. Exclusions can appear at multiple levels, starting from chapter level, categories extending to downward to more specific codes. So exclusions in a category indicate that an entity is specified elsewhere. And parentheses are used to indicate the code to which an exclusion refers. For example, acute fatty liver pregnancy, acute fatty liver of pregnancy is excluded from DB92, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And the code for the excluded category is provided within parentheses JA65.0. So this means acute fatty liver of pregnancy should not be coded under DB92, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and it should be coded under JA65.0 under the chapter of pregnancy and childbirth. Another convention, NOS. NOS stands for not otherwise specified. implying that the documentation that is used for classifying does not provide more detail beyond the term, implying unspecified, incompletely specified, or unqualified. And this concerns the specificity of the diagnostic statement. Coders should be careful not to code a term as unqualified unless no other information is available that would permit the assignment of another more specific code. For example, DB97.Z, inflammatory liver disease unspecified, hepatitis NOS, not otherwise specified. This means there are other types of inflammatory liver diseases. The code DB97.Z is only used if there is no other information to describe the type of inflammatory liver disease. If this were idiopathic granulomatous hepatitis, DB97.0 would be the appropriate code. Here is another example, DC31.Z, acute pancreatitis unspecified, pancreatitis not otherwise specified. If it is just pancreatitis without any specificity of the type of pancreatitis, you may use this code. Another convention is NEC, meaning not elsewhere classified. In a category title, serves as a warning that certain specified variants of the clinical concept may appear in other parts of the classification. And this is referring to the specificity or appropriateness of the code. DB97.2, chronic hepatitis not elsewhere classified, chronic active hepatitis NEC. In this example, the use of NEC in the code title indicates that other codes exist for different types of chronic active hepatitis. This code should be used only when the diagnosis does not fit into any other category. That is, when it is not classified elsewhere in ICD-11. Moving to another convention, certain informs that some entities that could be grouped here are grouped somewhere else outside the current chapter or block. In other words, the term certain refers to entities that couldn't be grouped anywhere else in the classification. Example, 8B22, certain specified cerebrovascular diseases. This means that only some specified cerebrovascular diseases are coded in this category, while other specific types of cerebrovascular diseases are classified elsewhere. So this is how it appears in the classification, 8B22, certain specified cerebrovascular diseases. Then some other conventions, spelling, parentheses, grammar, and other conventions. ICD-11 follow British rules, with exceptions and amendments conforming to WHO spelling rules. Singular form. Terms are listed in their singular form. For example, superficial injury of scalp instead of superficial injuries of scalp. And there is no use of apostrophes. No use of apostrophes with eponyms. Example, Hodgkin lymphoma instead of Hodgkin's lymphoma. Natural language. Entities are described using natural language. Example, myocardial infarction instead of infarction myocardial. Abbreviations. Abbreviations are printed using uppercase letters and followed by the complete title in full. Example, MI, myocardial infarction. Parentheses. Parentheses are used in the tabular list to enclose the code to which an exclusion term refers. For example, and we have already seen this, 9A01.3, infectious blepharitis. But blepharoconjunctivitis is excluded from this category, and the code for blepharoconjunctivitis is 9A60.4. And now we come to the end of our session on coding conventions used in ICD-11. Just to summarize, we discussed about the residual categories, other specified and unspecified. We discussed the use of due to, associated with, then code also had detail and has causing condition, the conventions required to be used. Then as manifestation, use additional code if desired, which are optional to use, and OO. Then NOS, NEC, standing for not otherwise specified and not elsewhere classified. The convention certain, then spelling, parentheses, grammar, and other conventions, singular form, and then we mentioned no use of apostrophes and the use of abbreviations and parentheses. Thank you very much. For more information, please contact me. And we will meet again with another episode of Coder Web Training. Thank you very much for listening.